city walls. Some of those we talked to elsewhere are saying that they fled after hearing that other villages had been attacked. What we do in Al Jazeera is try to balance these stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, tell it as it was, and give the people who allow us into their lives dignity and humanity as we tell their stories.
Crowds of mourners are on the streets of Beirut for the funeral of assassinated Hamas official Salah al-Aruri. He was killed in a drone attack on Tuesday. Hello there, I'm Laura Kyle. This is Al Jazeera Live from Doha. Also coming up, more Israeli strikes hit Gaza. Areas where Palestinians had sought refuge are targeted. More than 22,400 have been killed since October the 7th. Feeding thousands of displaced Palestinians, we visit a bakery in Gaza that's reopened after the war forced it shut for more than 50 days. And at least one Palestinian has been killed in overnight Israeli raids in the occupied West Bank. The funeral is underway in Beirut for a top Hamas official who was assassinated in the Lebanese capital on Tuesday. Salah al-Aruri was killed in a drone strike. He was the deputy chief of Hamas's political bureau and was a founder of its military wing, Qassam Brigades. Israel is being widely blamed for the attack but has not acknowledged responsibility. Our correspondent Imran Khan is also on the streets there of Beirut. Imran, we're expecting the coffin to pass by where you were. Where is it at the moment?
I don't know if we still are on air, but we are. I'm just going to get out of the way and show you. The funeral procession has actually arrived. It arrived in the last few moments, just as we came on air. They're moving around to where the bodies will be buried. The body of 57-year-old Salah al-Aruri, who was killed on Tuesday in a drone strike in the southern suburbs of Beirut. The man is 57 years old. He was the deputy chief of the Hamas political bureau. He was also one of the founding members of the Hamas arm during the Qassam Brigade. Spent 15 years in an Israeli jail. This is a very large turnout. It's a sign, a symbol of unity for the Palestinian movement. It's actually very difficult for me to hear myself right now. And I'm not sure I still have you, but if I do, I'm handing back to you now.
OK, Imran, thanks very much for bringing us the scene there from Beirut as that funeral procession passes you by and it heads towards the Palestinian Martyrs Cemetery, where we will see Salah al-Aruri, the top Hamas leader who was killed in an Israeli drone strike on Tuesday, where we will see him laid to rest along with 6 others who were killed in that drone strike. Israel has been ramping up its months-long war on the Strip. It's been heavily targeting Gaza's southern and central areas. 22 people were killed near Khan Yunis in overnight bombing. A house where displaced people were sheltering was amongst the buildings hit. Israeli warplanes have also bombed the Al-Maghazi camp in central Gaza. Rescue workers are searching through the rubble for survivors. 22,438 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since Israel began its attacks in October. Gaza's top municipal official says there are major shortages of basic necessities. He's appealing for more aid to be let in.
We cannot provide people with enough water in terms of quantity and quality. Almost no good water for drinking is available for the people. We cannot also provide people with wastewater treatment and also collection. a lot of quantities of
the more military attacks, as we have been also arriving to day 90 in fighting inside Gaza, where the Israeli military is expanding its military offensive across the Gaza Strip. In every single corner there is a new bombardment, and in particular in the last couple of hours the military had been making a very clear concentration of the military attacks on the middle governorates and also in the southern part of the territory, in particular in Khan Yunis city, where at least in that city 25 Palestinians have reported killed. And the attacks also today included another targeting for the Palestinian Red Crescent Society headquarters inside the city, as there are going to be more raids including artillery shelling of that part of the Gaza Strip. Also, the situation right now in the middle governorates of Gaza Strip, a clear deployment for the Israeli snipers on Salah ad-Din Road, especially near the villages of Al-Musaddar and the Zawaida, which is considered to be one of the main linking areas between the middle governorates and the southern part of Gaza, as there is also ongoing artillery shelling of the Al-Nusayrat and Al-Maghazi refugee camp in the last couple of hours. Residents there, in fact, have been informing us that they have been going through completely difficult situation, as the Israeli forces are showering them with bombs and also shelling, and they are struggling to find access to get and to head more to the southern part of the territory. As now we have been seeing also and observing a systematic destruction of the residential buildings in the middle after destroying more than 70% of Gaza's northern and central residential units there. It seems that Israel right now is transferring from the one phase of destruction to another phase right now, which had been concentrating on the middle and the southern part of Gaza.
OK, Tariq Abu Azoum, thanks very much for that update from southern Gaza in Rafah. Well, Israel says it's intercepted 2 rockets fired from Gaza over the city of Ashkelon. Multiple projectiles were seen being shot down by Israel's Iron Dome air defense systems. No casualties have been reported in that attack. Now, the United States Secretary of State will be departing for the Middle East later on Thursday. It's on a trip that's expected to include a stop in Israel. Antony Blinken's previous trip to Israel was during a 7-day pause in fighting. Blinken's visit comes at a period of heightened tensions in the region after the killing of a senior Hamas figure in Lebanon. Our correspondents are following this story in both the United States and in Israel. In just a moment, we'll be hearing from Sarah Harrit in Tel Aviv. But first, let's go to Kimberly Halkett at the White House. And Kimberly, what do we know about Blinken's visit and what he's hoping to achieve?
Yeah, what we know is that this is a trip that has been planned and scheduled for a number of days, if not a week. But what we do know is that it has increased importance now with the killing of that top Hamas leader in Lebanon, because what the big concern is for the Biden administration is that tensions are escalating, and there is this fear of a so-called second front. At least that's according to the National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby. So in addition to the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, there will also be another senior diplomat that is in the region, and that is a man by the name of Amos Hochstein. Now, what we know is that they are going to be meeting with top Lebanese as well as, well, in the case of the latter diplomat, Lebanese officials. Antony Blinken will be meeting not only with Israeli officials, but also with other nations as he carries on his trip. But the bottom line is the goal for all of this is really to try and make sure that the Israeli war on Gaza does not extend into a broader Middle East conflict. What we should point out in all of this is, well, Israel has not claimed responsibility or denied responsibility for that attack in Lebanon. It's clear, obviously, that Hezbollah has attributed it to Israel, as has Hamas, and that has escalated tensions. And so this is the fear. And so that is why these diplomats are working with the Israelis. They are trying to contain what they fear is an escalating situation.
OK, Kimberly, many thanks indeed for joining us there from Washington, D.C. Let's now go over to Tel Aviv, where we can speak to Sarah. Sarah, what is the significance of Blinken's visit to Israel from your view there at a time of such heightened tensions on the border with Lebanon?
Well, of course, primarily it will be a discussion on what's going on in Gaza. We know that the pressure from the US has been increasing, as well as the international pressure and condemnation to the number of civilians killed in Gaza. So that will definitely be on the table. Also included in that is whether there's a possibility to revive a second ceasefire after the last one ended in early December. Since then, there's been a number of captives that have been declared as dead, and that's certainly not what the families have been wanting. They've been calling for the release of all of those captives. And if that means an end to the war, then that's the option they would go for. Of course, that will be discussed. Also, as you were mentioning there, the northern border. Now, in the last few minutes, we've had a statement actually released saying that Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, has met with Amos Hochstein. This happened here in Tel Aviv. A discussion was also including the the Israeli ambassador to the US, as well as the chief of staff, discussing the northern border and also talking about the possibility of the 65,000 people that have been forced out of their homes, whether they would be able to return. That's what the Israelis want to ensure, that they can return safely, and that's certainly what those that live along there want. Now, in terms of whether there's a chance of escalation, of course there is a high possibility. This could potentially become a regional problem. However, if you listen to Nasrallah's speech that happened yesterday, he did talk about Israel. If Israel is the one that carries out that war, that takes that first step, then it will respond. Even though it has said that any such attack that would happen in Beirut would have serious repercussions, well, we haven't seen that just yet. What we have been seeing is crossfire, tit for tat every single day, but nothing major that could lead to an escalation. What Israel has been wanting seems unattainable. It wants Hezbollah to be pushed back from the border.
And Sarah, the Israeli War Cabinet is set to meet later tonight. This is after it's been postponed not once but twice.
The Security Cabinet is a discussion that's going to be taking place as well as the War Cabinet. Now, what happened about a week ago was that the War Cabinet was going to discuss what happens after the war. And then you had some ministers, including the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, that said, no, this should include a wider expanded cabinet, i.e. the Security Cabinet, that would include more ministers that could also be part of that decision making. Now, when Aruri was killed, the Security Cabinet was delayed, and they will be discussing this. It seems that this will be on the table later on this evening. In terms of what they will discuss, there'll be plenty of questions and plenty of area to cover. For example, the Israeli media is already suggesting that some of the questions that might be asked is what happens to those residents that were kicked out of the north by the Israelis and made to move south. That's hundreds of thousands of them. Is it time to allow them to slowly start to return? Even if they did, a lot of the homes are destroyed, and a lot of the building and infrastructure is destroyed. Whether that's possible or not, it's still unclear. However, another important discussion, and this also comes from US pressure, is allowing more humanitarian aid in, and whether they would look to open the Erez crossing. So a lot to be discussed, and also who would then be in charge of Gaza once all this fighting ends. A lot of unanswered questions, and potentially we may find out more this evening.
OK, thanks very much, Sarah, for the update there from Tel Aviv. Now, a bakery has reopened in the city of Deir al-Balah in central Gaza after the war forced it to close for more than 50 days. Airstrikes on the territory's bakeries have added to a catastrophic food shortage. Hind al-Qudari reports.
I'm currently in front of one of the bakeries that is finally operating and facilitating and selling bread for the Palestinians in Deir al-Balah. After 50 days of halting its services, the World Food Programme provided this bakery with all of the ingredients and the fuel needed to serve and to sell bread for these Palestinians for more than 50 days. Palestinians have been making their own bread, using fire and using their own hands. It has been very tiring for all of these displaced people. As you see, people are in queues waiting their turn. But in Deir al-Balah, it was a very deadly night where the explosions did not stop. The artillery shelling did not stop. And in the morning, we saw that the Israeli tanks have been stationed near the entrance of Al-Maghazi refugee camps, where people have been evacuating since the past couple of days after the Israeli forces asked them and warned them to evacuate. The artillery shelling literally did not stop. As hope of a new bakery is operating, people still fear an Israeli invasion in the middle area of the Gaza Strip. This is Hind al-Khudari for Al Jazeera, Deir al-Balah.
Still ahead here on Al Jazeera. The Nigerian naira takes a hit. We'll tell you how businesses in Lagos are adapting after their currency lost much of its value.
Hello, the weather's largely set fair across China and the Korean Peninsula at the moment. You see this area of cloud pulling out into the open waters, a little area of low pressure just sliding further eastwards. We still have something of a northerly breeze across Japan, so still a chance of 1 or 2 wintry showers as we go through Friday, particularly into Hokkaido. The odd shower possibility too into that western side of Honshu. Further east, it's looking largely settled and sunny. Sunshine too across the Korean Peninsula, northern parts of China, not too bad as well. We have got some wetter weather trying to push into central and southern parts. It's bumping into our high, so it's getting wrung out. A little more in the way of cloud as we go on through Saturday, but a few showers down towards the far south. And as you can see, still a few showers hugging that west coast of Japan at that stage. A few showers maybe making their way towards Vietnam, but nothing too much to speak of. Wetter weather there through the Philippines, Malaysia, seeing the usual heavy downpours, heat of the day showers. Wettest weather will be around the Malay Peninsula. Sumatra still seeing some big downpours. And a chance of some downpours too to southern parts of India. A few showers just around the plains there. Hopefully the fog and smog not quite as dense, but remaining there right into Pakistan.
Again, you're watching Al Jazeera. Here's a reminder of our top stories this hour. A funeral is underway in the Lebanese capital, Beirut, for a top Hamas official who was assassinated there on Tuesday. Salah al-Aruri was killed in a drone strike. Israel is being widely blamed for the attack, but has not acknowledged responsibility. Israel is intensifying its bombardment of central and southern Gaza. The Al-Maghazi camp in central Gaza was amongst the areas hit. Earlier, 22 people were killed in overnight bombing in Khan Yunis. And the US Secretary of State will be heading to the Middle East later on Thursday on a trip that's expected to include a stop in Israel. Antony Blinken's previous trip to Israel was during a 7-day pause in fighting. Let's bring in Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, Marwan Bashar. He joins us here again on set. Marwan, what do you think Blinken is hoping to achieve on this visit, and what's he likely to achieve?
Well, if he achieves anything, it'll be a success, because over the last 90 days, how many times have you been here? 5, 6 times in the Middle East? He never produced anything, except he's been Israel's defense lawyer in various Arab capitals. I mean, no one have taken upon themselves the responsibility of defending Israel's genocide, Israel's war crimes, Israel's war in Arab capitals other than Blinken. Right? It was his job, as it were, to visit Israel and then to do his journey around Arab capitals to assure, to perhaps blackmail, to defend Israel, to put some new timelines and so on and so forth. So he's done that for a good number of days. In Palestine, in Gaza, when we spoke on a number of occasions while Blinken was about to visit or just visited, there was always trepidation that whenever Blinken visits, war gets worse for the Palestinians somehow, right? So every time he says, I'm coming to help, Palestinians go like, please do not help, because the more you help, the worse it's getting. Jokes aside, I think he's probably need to do a lot of whitewashing, because the United States has boxed itself in behind Israel, behind Netanyahu in particular, and that has not brought America any more credibility, any more advantage in the region. It's rather the contrary. And I think he needs to do a lot of cleanup job behind the Netanyahu government. We'll see if he succeeds to do that or not.
OK, we'll certainly keep an eye on that. In the meantime, just stay with us, because the US has criticised South Africa for bringing a genocide case against Israel before the UN's top court. An initial hearing at the International Court of Justice in The Hague is due to be held next week. Let's take a listen to what the US said.
We find this submission meritless, counterproductive, and completely without any basis in fact whatsoever.
So, Marwan, you know, we hear from John Kirby there totally dismissing the case brought by South Africa, or that will be brought by South Africa to the International Court of Justice. What's your reaction when you hear that dismissal?
I think it's insulting, mostly dismissive of South Africa, as you said, but it's insulting. In diplomatic arena, the American spokesperson would have to extend more courtesy to South Africa that has good relationships with the United States. But also South Africa that had its own memory with crime against humanity, apartheid. It's a South Africa that has a long history of struggle against oppression, against racism, against the kind of crimes we see happening in Palestine. So I think the United States and the spokesperson owes South Africa a bit more respect, a bit more courtesy, and certainly an explanation, because a 70-page document that I read twice over the weekend, and I did not find a single flaw in it, and it was very well sourced, deserves more than 3 words: meritless, baseless, counterproductive. I challenge the American spokesperson, who's an admiral and who presumably has his way with words, to find me a single word, a single fact, a single citation in the 70-page document that is wrong. Besides all of that, we know that an increasing segment of the American public opinion think what Israel is doing in Gaza is a war crime or something close to a genocide. An increasing number of the young in the United States, certainly a majority in the Democratic Party, is not in agreement with what Israel does in South Africa. So he owes all of those, the American public, South Africa, certainly, but the Palestinians, some courtesy and respect.
OK, Marwan Bishara, thanks very much for joining us once again in the studio. Now, at least one person has been killed and several others injured during an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank. One man was shot in the city of Tubas during confrontations with Israeli forces. Raids are also happening in Tulkarem in Nur Shams refugee camp. There have been reports of dozens of arrests. The Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei have promised what they're calling a harsh response after 2 explosions killed dozens of people in the southeast. Health officials have revised this death toll for a second time. They're now saying the number of people killed is 84. The attack happened at a cemetery in the city of Kerman during a ceremony at the tomb of the assassinated senior general Qasem Soleimani. The Iraqi government has strongly condemned a drone strike targeting the headquarters of an Iran-backed armed group in Baghdad. At least 3 people were killed in the strike. One of them was a senior member of the Popular Mobilization Forces. That's an umbrella group of Shia paramilitary groups. 5 other members were injured. Some members of the group have targeted US bases in Iraq since Israel's war on Gaza began. The US has launched a number of strikes in retaliation. A transcript of communication between air traffic control and 2 planes that collided at a Tokyo airport this week has shown only the Japan Airlines passenger jet was given permission to be on the runway. A Coast Guard plane was preparing to take off on the same runway when the Airbus A350 landed and hit the smaller aircraft, killing 5 people on board. The transcript shows the Coast Guard plane had not been cleared for takeoff. Japan's Prime Minister says emergency teams are in a race against time to save people still trapped after Monday's earthquake destroyed hundreds of buildings in the west of the country. At least 82 people are known to have died. Eunice Kim reports from Noto Peninsula.
On our way to the most affected areas of Noto Peninsula, we're met by a road closure.
Now I'm driving on local roads. I'm not sure how long it will take.
Along the way, we see several homes abandoned and leveled, and long lines at petrol stations. Sirens sound as ambulances from across the main island of Honshu race to rescue people in need. Suddenly, a warning to halt. There's a 5.5 magnitude tremor nearby.
We finally arrived at Noto, some 30 kilometers south of the epicenter of that quake, where many elderly people call home. They tell us they were simply shocked at the level of destruction, with so many structures needing to be rebuilt.
It feels like hell.
Kaiichi Hirota is one of the lucky ones. Though his barbershop of 5 decades sustained some structural damage and the water is off, it's still standing. After a massive earthquake and tsunami warning on Monday had Hirota and his wife race to a shelter, they're only just coming to check on the shop. He says they'll stay, and he hopes others will as well.
We're cleaning up outside. My tools are not damaged. When the water comes, I think I might work a little longer. I'm 81 and a half years old now, healthy, and my hands still work.
Tens of thousands of buildings were reduced to rubble in the magnitude 7.6 tremor, and it's feared many people are still waiting for rescue. Some areas are inaccessible due to demolished roads. In Suzu, with one of the highest casualty counts, supplies are so low that this evacuee says he's only had 1 cup of water in 3 days. Leaders have appealed for help to get here faster. Elsewhere in the city, a man watches workers carry out his wife's body from what has been their home. A loss that cannot be undone by the line of ambulances and fire trucks filing into the disaster zones. Eunice Kim, Al Jazeera, Noto, Japan.
Troops have been deployed across Bangladesh ahead of general elections on Sunday. The army says it's there to keep the peace, but it'll take action if election officials ask it to. The main opposition party is boycotting the vote after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina rejected their demand that she should resign and hand power to a neutral authority. She's running for a 4th consecutive term. 5 people in southwest China have been injured by stray artillery shells fired from across the border in Myanmar. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says it's lodged a protest with Myanmar. Florence Louis has more from Beijing.
The incident happened on Wednesday afternoon, but it's only on Thursday that Chinese state media Global Times have published a video of it. Now, one of the videos shows moments after a shell landed on a pavement. Local officials say 5 people have been injured and they've been sent to a hospital in Nansan town. And they also say the shells came from Myanmar's northern Kokang region. Now, this region is particularly restive. It's been that way even before the Myanmar military coup in 2021. There have been some years where fighting between Myanmar rebels and also Myanmar military got so intense that tens of thousands of people temporarily crossed over the border into China to escape. Now, in recent months, conflict has surged again between the military, between ethnic armed groups, and also between pro-democracy fighters. Just last week, the Chinese embassy in Myanmar urged Chinese nationals to leave Laogai, the main town in the region, citing growing insecurity. Now, of this recent incident, the Chinese Foreign Ministry says it deplores the Chinese casualties caused by the conflict and says it's urged all sides to take measures to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. Florence Louis, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
Now, Nigerians love their cars, but it is hard to keep them on the road these days. The loss of their currency's value and expensive import tariffs have led to high inflation. That's forcing some Nigerians to wean themselves off imported goods. Ahmed Idris reports from Nigeria's business capital, Lagos.
Karim Adebayo replaces the faulty part of a car rear view mirror. His customer wants it repaired as he can't afford a new one. After several tries, the trader turned artisan fixed the mirror with locally fabricated parts.
If you come here with a model that is higher than what we have, we know how we make sure you get what you want that will serve the same purpose, and the durability is there.